Hello everyone. Sorry about the video for this week. I'm having to use my phone because I don't have access to my computer right now, or my tablet, which doesn't take very good picture quality. But anyway, our presentations this week are on our research projects. Mine is actually pretty close to my interest in American history. I love anything to do with the American Revolution, so I chose Christianity in the American Revolution. My thesis statement was Christianity and its leaders have played a fundamental role in the history of the United States of America from colonial times until the present. However, its most endearing legacy is in its role in advocating liberty. The biggest role in advocating liberty. Well, first thing I had to think of was the American Revolution. And my actual thesis statement there was that by providing biblical justification as well as manpower, Christians greatly influenced the American Revolution. Now, many scholars have written on this subject, and they tend to go on two different pathways. Now, John Butler, in his 1990 Awash in a Sea of Faith, Christianizing the American People, argued that the American Revolution was primarily a secular event and that religion was a secondary issue. You'll find that more modern historians, such as Patricia Bonomi, Thomas Kidd, and Ellis Sandoz, of course, have argued differently. They argue that religion may not have been a primary cause of the American Revolution, but it certainly was very influential. Bonomi, for instance, under the Cape of Heaven, her book, states that it was from the pulpits that the revolution gained its momentum. Let's see here. Now, what she means by that is that every Sunday service, there was a preacher, minister, reverend, that would preach based on biblical scripture and try to relate to the people at the time. Well, these were people that fled persecution. They were used to having some form of self-government in their everyday lives. And these pastors would use the scriptures to show examples from biblical history why the American people had a right to fight back against King George. And that God would be on their side because they were fighting for his cause. Now, this is going to sound kind of silly, but from reading that one passage in Bonomi's book, I couldn't help but flash back to the movie The Patriot and Reverend Oliver. And I got to thinking, well, if these religious leaders were exposed and supportive of the cause of liberty, then was it not possible that they also served in other capacities? And what I found was that yes, quite a few religious leaders went to the armies and militias to serve as chaplains, which were field ministers. They served as surgeons. They even served as soldiers. Now, there are two famous fighting parsons that are very interesting. There is the Presbyterian Reverend James Caldwell, and there is the Lutheran minister Peter Muhlenberg. Now, James Caldwell, while he was actually murdered, and I think it was right after the a year after the Quebec campaign, and his murderers were actually put on trial, but and they were executed. But he was famous because his church was filled with patriot leaders and a lot of future congressional politicians. And, well, when he started preaching the patriot rhetoric, he actually had his church burned down. His wife was, they believe that she was murdered by Tories, which influenced him to go to war and really fight. Now, his famous saying was, put some Watts in them, boys. Now, Watts, I believe his name was Isaac Watts, was the writer of the hymn books there at a local church. Well, when the Continental Army started to run out of munition, he ran in there and got all the hymn books and ripped the pages out, and they were to use them as ammunition. And it worked. They actually won that fight. I forget the battle, but it's actually in the paper, and that's where you get put some Watts in them, boys. Now, Peter Muhlenberg he actually attained the rank of a major general and went on to serve in Congress as well. A very dynamic person. He saw battle and he was the commander of the 8th Virginia Regiment. He saw battle at Brandywine, Monmouth, Yorktown, and quite a few others. And, well, his famous story is, well, the reveal of how he was going to war. And we don't know if this is true because it actually came from the publication of his biography by his great-nephew. Now, we do know he went to war, of course, but this actual story has no confirmation other than the great-nephew's. Was that while he was preaching a sermon based on the verses of Ecclesiastes 3 through 3 and 3 through 8, where it says there shall be a season and a time for any purpose. Basically, there's a time and place for everything. Well, the 8th verse there was that there's a time for war and then there's a time for peace. Well, right as he finished saying that during the sermon, he took off his clerical robes and revealed that he was wearing a Continental Colonel's uniform. It's time for war, boys. Let's go. He actually, I believe the numbers were 162 to 300, which he helped to enlist that night and to leave for the next morning to form the 8th Virginia Regiment. Now, these men were just so inspiring. I mean, they approached the revolution with both faith and logic. So, I mean, I couldn't help but look into this, and I can see where Bonomi would come up with the conclusion that the American Revolution was led from the pulpits. Anyway, I should probably get back to typing up what I have written because I have a bunch more to do. Anyway, hope to see your thoughts. Thanks. Bye.